I'm Di. Welcome to my channel. Please excuse my voice, I have been sick, so it's a little bit husky. But anyway, let's get on with it. Welcome back if you've been to my channel before. And if this is the first time here, what we do is, as it says, Di's Home and Garden. So sometimes we're in the kitchen cooking, out in the garden. I've got a vegetable garden and a flower garden. And also I do crafts. So I do sewing, crocheting, knitting. And today I'm actually doing some sewing. So I made a dress. Excuse me, I just reached over for it. I made a dress for my granddaughter quite a while back. Very simple dress, just going a little bit closer, just a very plain bodice. It's got a zip in the back and it's lined, the bodice is lined, and then the skirt part is just gathered, it's just straight and gathered where it's joined, and then on the bottom I've trimmed it with some lace. So she's grown out of this and she loved this dress, which she called her unicorn dress. As you can see, there's unicorns and it's a glittery type fabric, so she actually loved it. Now, I'm going to make her a bigger size. I'm actually going to be making her 2 dresses. So, the pattern that I've used for this, again, I've spoken previously about the knit width patterns that I use. Now, these are made for knitted fabrics, but I also use them for woven fabrics. I just make it a little bit bigger. So this pattern is for it's children's sizes, size 1 to 6, and it's for top, pants, shorts and panties. So what I've taken is the t-shirt pattern of this, because basically what I need the shape of, I need the shape of the neck and I need the shoulders and the arms. That's just a standard t-shirt pattern, and then I've cut it short. I've just allowed a little bit down from the armhole seam, and then I've cut it and then gathered on a skirt. So it's very easy to adapt patterns. You don't need to be, if you've got a pattern for something and it's the right size, it's giving you the sizes of the shoulders and the scoop of the neck. So with this one, it does have, I've cut it already. I've cut out the pattern pieces, and it has a high neck on it, on the pattern that I used. So I've got to actually lower that down by 1.5 centimeters. So I've just got to trim that off. I didn't want to trim the pattern piece. I wanted to leave it the way it was. And then in the back, so you normally would just have a piece for the front and a piece for the back, but the piece for the back I have split, and then I added a little bit. So just, I'll get the pattern piece off. So what I've done there, you can see just outside the pattern, I've added extra. So this allows for the seam down the back. It allows for where I'm going to be putting the zip. And to be able to fold that over, to have some extra fabric there to do that. But the front of it was just cut on the fold, so it's just one piece. So you can see that I've shown you 2 different fabrics. So this is the outer, and then I line it with this. So we make both of them, sew them together, turn it inside out, and it's all ready to go to put the skirt on. So quite simple. So come along with me as I say that. Okay, so I have all my pattern pieces here, and I'll just show you what I have. The lighter is the lining. So there's the front piece, and there are the 2 back pieces. Oh, not showing you very well, am I? So that's the front piece, and then we have 2 back pieces. Now what I'm going to be doing is assembling all this, and then I've got the same pieces in the main fabric, and then I'm going to put one inside the other and sew them together. So I'll come back when I've sewn each of these, and then I'll show you what I'm doing next. So I've now sewn up the top. I'm showing this inside out, there we go, and I've sewn the lining for that as well. So it's sewn so that I've done the shoulder seams and I've done the side seams. Now the next thing to do is to sew these together. So what I need to do is to make sure that I have the right sides together. One goes inside the other. So I've put that one the right way, and I'm just putting that inside the lining. Now it's quite easy. I'm just going to be matching up these shoulder seams, sewing all the way along there, sew that all together, and then turn it inside out. So I'll come back when I've sewn both of those together. So all along the way as I'm making this garment, I press my seams. So I've just sewn the lining to the outer, and I've done that along the neck edge. So I'm just bringing it here to to iron that seam down and to make it nice and flat, so that then I can go back along that and do a top stitch. So just being careful as I do it that I don't roll the lining to the outside. It's all got to stay on the inside. There we go. And the steam is doing the work for me. While I'm there, I've just got to press that shoulder seam. Just making it lay nice and flat and even before I press it. And again, I'll just press this shoulder seam down. Okay. So there's areas there, I don't know if you can see that on the close-up, where the lining is showing, so I just need to repress some of the areas here. I don't want that lining showing. So we'll just repress that area there. Okay, the rest of it looks good, and now we'll go and do a top stitch around there. Now I've got the raw edges of the sleeves. Well, they're not sleeves, they're the armholes. So there are no sleeves in this. So I've got the raw edges there that I need to finish off. And I've got the lining and the outer. And what I need to do there is cut some fabric on the bias. So you can see there's stretch in that. And what I've done, I've hemmed over one side of that. Sorry, not hemmed over. I've just folded over like a little hem and ironed it in place. So I'll show you how I'm going to be attaching this. Now, first of all, I'm going to run a stitch around both the armholes just to hold those two fabrics together. So I've taken that piece of bias and I have pinned it around the armholes. So both armholes now have the bias pinned, and how I've pinned it is you can see that the raw edge there is against the raw edge of the armhole, and the part that I folded over is on the outside there. So once I've sewn a row of sewing there, then I fold that over and goes under, and then I'll do another row of sewing. So the first row of sewing you're not going to see, it's going to be encased in the binding. It's the second row of sewing that you'll see that I do on the inside. So I'll get that done and then I'll come back and show you. Okay, so I have sewn the edging on. So as I said, I did a row of stitching on the outside, then I turned it in to the inside and sewed it inside. So that is what the inside looks like now. And for that top part, I'm just showing you the inside. There are no raw seams showing. Everything is encased. And so that's the top part done. And we just need to put a skirt on it. So I have cut a length of fabric. Now, I would normally measure around the waist and then double that, but I just took whatever the width of the fabric was. So the length, I'm using her other dress, which she has grown out of, but it was a bit too long when I made it. So I've decided to make it the same length of that, because as she's grown, this should be the right length now. So all I need to do on this one is to do a row of stitching to gather it. Now to gather it, what I do, I just use just a normal running stitch. I don't lock it in either end. I make sure that I've got some threads hanging out either end. I do it the longest stitch that I can, and once that's done, I can pull the threads to gather it, and I just measure it so that it goes from one side all the way around to the other side, and I adjust the gathers as I go, pin it on, and then sew it together. So I'll just get that running stitch done. So there is my running stitch done on there. As I've sewn that, it has gathered up a little bit, but what I need to do is just to gather those threads there, and then I can just pull that along and adjust it, adjust the gathers, and I'll do the same for the other end, and then I'll measure it and see how it is against the bodice of the dress that I'm making. Now, one thing I wanted to make clear here is that I taught myself to sew. Before the internet, I just used to work it out, and I will tell you, I would look at how garments were constructed, and I had those patterns which gave me information on how to sew stretch fabrics. But when it came to doing woven fabrics, that's just another kettle of fish. And I will say I used to spend hours unpicking because I would have done things wrong. But I did the best I could to learn. And they say the best way of learning is learning from your mistakes. And I certainly made a lot. So when you see what I'm doing, I'm not an expert. If you are a good sewer and know better methods, that's all well and good, but this is just the way that I do things. So I'm not telling you this is the way you have to do it. This is just a suggestion, and it's just basically showing you how I do it. So there's my disclaimer. But as I say, the best way to learn is when you make a mistake and you have to sit and unpick it and you work out what did you do wrong, how can you avoid that mistake again next time. And I will say I've made the same mistake over a few times, but it's all in the process. It's all in the process. Okay, gathering all that up there, and now I'm going to measure it. I don't know why, but my camera shut off then, so I don't know how much it captured, so I'll just go over what I'm doing. I've gathered the skirt and I'm now attaching it to the bodice, and I've got the 2 raw edges on the bodice and the raw edge on the skirt, and I'm just making sure that they're all lined up together and pinning them. And as I go, I'm just making sure that the gathers on the skirt are nice and even, because sometimes you can tend to get a heavily gathered area and then one that's not gathered enough. So just making sure that those 3 edges are all together. And I may need to adjust this slightly as I get to the end of it. We'll just see how I go. Yeah, it's just like a centimetre too long, so I'm just going to pull that in a little bit further. I'm just gathering that thread and just pulling it a little bit further along, and I'll spread that gather out a little bit. There we go. Okay, once I've pinned all this together, then my next job is to sew it all, sew that whole seam all the way along. So we'll come back when I've done that. I'll just show you what I've done. So with the right sides together, I've pinned it. I've pinned the bodice onto the skirt, and now I'm going to sew all along that edge. Okay, so I have sewn that seam. I'll just show you. I've sewn the seam there and I've overlocked it. So that's all been done. So now we've got the dress. I'll just turn this up, change that. We've got the dress. We have got the bodice with the skirt on it. And what we need to do now is to address the back, and then we just need to do the hem and we're finished. So in the back, I can do this a few ways. I could put some buttons along the back, but I'm going to put a zip. I find that just when you're dressing little girls, it's just easier if you have a zip. And also, my daughter used to have very long hair, just like my granddaughter does, and buttons on the back of a dress for a young girl with long hair, just asking for trouble. The hair gets caught in it, and yeah, there's no end of trouble. So a zipper is nice and easy. So we'll get that done. So again, I will give the disclaimer. I am not a professional sewer. I am self-taught. What you're seeing in this video, I'm showing you how I make a dress. I'm not telling you that this is the way you should do it. There's probably many better ways, and there's probably people watching this who are really good sewers who could possibly give some hints, and if you can, put them in the comments. I'd love to hear them, and I'm sure other people would love to read them as well. But having said that, I am now going to put a zipper in the only way I know how to put a zipper in. So if it's not the right way, well, it works for me and it looks okay. So anybody probably looking at it would say it's not a very professional job, but let's see how we go with it, okay? So the first thing I've done is to sew right down, well, the first thing I did was to actually make sure it's all overlocked, both sides of that, and then I've sewn it together using a running stitch that I can pull out later. So now I'm going to pin the zip in place. So I just start with the top of the zip on the top of the garment because I will be putting a button on there once I've got the zip in place. Now this zip is a little bit long, so I'm just going to pin it down to what I want it, and then I'm going to chop it off. Okay, let's get pinning. And I'm just making sure that the zip is lined up with the seam. I'll just actually turn that around and do it the other way, work the other way. So I'll just change that one. Just making sure that the zip is lined up with the seam. Right, I'll come back when I've done that. So my camera keeps shutting down. I don't know if I've lost footage there, but I was just saying that I'm sewing along the edge, and there is a line on the zipper that I'm following. It's all pinned in place, so I'm just taking the pins out as I go along. I did get down to the bottom, not the bottom of the zipper. The zipper is too long, so I've just gone over where I want to cut it, and I sewed backwards and forwards, so it's got 3 rows of sewing. Okay, that's done. Right, we'll take that off, and then I'll put the normal foot back on. And I'm sorry if I've missed any steps. It's just that my camera keeps shutting down, and I'm often not aware that it's stopped recording, so I hope that there's enough of an explanation there. So we'll just release that zipper foot and put it away. And now, what did I do there? Let's reattach my other foot. Okay. There. Back to normal. Now I can cut that zip off. You can see where I've gone over it a few times with my stitching. What I need to do next is to finish this seam down the bottom here, because remember I only put a tacking stitch in there. So I'm just going to complete the seam down the bottom. Tidy up the threads. Now, I'll just go and cut that zip, and then I'll be back. I'm just tidying up threads. I hate when there's all threads hanging on a garment. Okay. Right, I'll be back in a moment. So I have cut the zipper, and I'm just showing you the back of the garment now. This is where I did the seam down here. You can see either side. I've sewn the zipper in, and now I'm just going to take that seam out, and you'll see how the zipper works. So I'll just come back when I've unpicked that seam. So there you have it. I have unpicked that seam that I put in that running stitch, and now, oh, that's one thing I didn't check before. I didn't check that the zipper worked. There we go, it was just a bit stuck. So there's the zip, and it's nicely inserted in there with the cover on it. There we go. That's just sitting there. I just need to press that flat. Now, the last thing we know, or second last thing, we can see at the top there's a little bit of a gap. What I'm going to do there is to put a very small button, and I'll just put a loop of elastic as to go the hook onto that, just at the top. And then at the bottom, I'm going to add some lace trim. So the first thing I'll do is to overlock this, and then we'll come back when I've got the lace ready to go on. So this is some lace edging that I have. Oh, a bit too close to the camera. Okay, and so what I'm going to do, one side is all finished off nicely and the other side is just a raw edge. So I'm going to sew that onto the bottom of the garment. And you have to be careful with this to know what's the inside and what's the outside. I'm going to take the right side, and let's turn you around so you can see what I'm doing at my sewing machine. I'm going to take the right side, and as you've heard me say lots of times before, it's right sides together. So the right side is going against the right side of that. Now I'm just double checking that I didn't turn it around that way, and yeah. So now what I'm going to do, where is my seam? I'm just looking for the back seam. That's where I'll have the join of this. So we'll just put a little bit extra there, and we're just going to go along and sew this on. So as I said, right sides together, and it may look like I'm doing it wrong, but you'll see when I finish that there's a method here. Now, you don't need to put this lace trim on. Oops, it's tucked under. You can just put a hem. You don't need to do this. I just think it finishes it nicely. Yeah, I do tend to do this on most of the dresses that I make. Just join that. And again, I need to clip all those threads and neaten it up. And then I'll just trim that back. Now I don't want that to fray, so I'll just run another lot of stitching in there. Right, so now that that's done, the next thing we're going to do, besides trimming threads again, the next thing we're going to do is fold it over and do another row of stitching right along the edge of it, really close. So starting where the seam is. Go with the needle down position. And right. want to do it nice and close, so take a little bit slow. That's it, done. Okay, trim those threads again. I'll need to press that. So, we have finished. Besides me putting that button on the back, the garment is finished. And here we are. I'll just take it back a bit so that you can see. A very pretty little summer dress. Now, why I make it without sleeves is because in winter she can actually wear that with a t-shirt underneath or even a skivvy underneath and some leggings. So there you go. I do actually have some fabric that matches that, and I will probably make her a pair of leggings. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you didn't miss too much of that video with my camera shutting down. Now I will be making another one. I've got some lovely fabric here. It's a seersucker fabric, so it's beautiful to wear, and it's non-iron, so it's good for the bum as well. So if I've missed any, I will film it when I'm making that one, so you may see during the video that there were different fabrics used, and that would be the reason. All right, thanks once again for joining me. I do apologise, my voice just hasn't come back after being sick, so hopefully we'll be back to normal soon and you won't have to listen to this raspiness. But anyway, I hope that you have a great day. I hope that that's inspired you, and we'll see you again on the next video. Thanks for joining me. Bye.